And away we go. It is the Nightcap right here on BearcatJournal.com, brought to you as always by our great friends at Galactic Fried Chicken. Visit www.galacticfriedchicken.com. Download the app for Android, iPhone, everything Galactic. They will deliver pretty much anywhere in the 275 loop. They will bring it to your house, or you can get down to Dayton, Kentucky. Tell them to pump it up, save 15%, and make sure. Look, I'm telling you, you have to get the chicken dunkers. They are outstanding. And I credit Shane for not calling them boneless wings, for coming up with a new phrase, a new term, for his delicious bite-sized pieces of chicken. Get you some Galactic sauce, get you some sides, and make sure you're taking care of our awesome longtime partners at Galactic Fried Chicken. All right, Aaron Smith, Chad Brendel. We had a pretty in-depth basketball conversation yesterday, which I think we're getting into the heart of basketball season. I know we've got a bowl game on Saturday. I'm sure as we get to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, our focus will turn a little bit more to that. I was at practice today. I can say I think Cincinnati's going to have a pretty damn good roster going into the Fenway Bowl. There will be some holes, of course, with names you've heard entering the draft process, some names you've heard entering the portal. I think Lenny Taylor was probably the biggest one that came out today. Cincinnati will be without Josh Wiley and Lenny Taylor at the tight end position. So Evan Prater's going to have to work with some new weapons. But guess what? Evan Prater has been working with guys
those
like
guys who are going to have to step up.
Shimon Mateer, Chris Scott, Blue Smith. Like, those are the guys Evan's been working with. So I feel pretty good about where Cincinnati's roster is going into the Fenway Bowl, and we'll get into more of that heading into the weekend. But I did want to touch on something that not only was it annoying, I think it's just stupid, and I think it's ignorance, and it's hot takery, and it's people just looking for attention. And that is this notion that after the crosstown shootout, Wes Miller is on the hot seat. What are we doing? Like, that's just showing that you're being clickbait, hot take, like terrible perspective, that a guy that took over for a disaster.
Correct.
And a roster that was in shambles.
John Rothstein called it Cincinnati's lowest point.
Yeah. The program had bottomed out. And I know a lot of UC fans took umbrage to that John Rothstein tweet. What have we seen in the past year and a half? That the roster had bottomed out, and that Wes Miller has done, and has it been a quick fix? No, it's not been a quick fix. It has been a slow, steady accumulation of not only development, but addition of talent.
How'd you expect it to be a quick fix? Wes Miller was known for UNCG, not for a big program.
And what he did there was take one of the worst college basketball programs in the country. It took him 5 years. This can't take him 5 years. I don't think there's any
Agreed.
There's any like discrepancy in that. And I think Wes Miller knows that like you can't get to year 5 and still haven't made the NIT or like not on the bubble for the NCAA tournament. He knows the history of this basketball program and the expectations of this fan base. But to be someone that's going to suggest that Wes Miller is on the hot seat after 40 games, after cleaning up the shit show that John Brannon left behind, and that's not to deal with whether or not John Brannon was a good coach or not.
He had 30 days to piece together a roster last season. 30 days.
And now he's continuing to build on what was look.
Some big swings.
Yeah. Do you think Victor Locken has developed over the past 18 months?
Can anyone deny that?
Do you think David DeJulius hasn't developed over the past 18 months? Now, Dave's not going to be here going forward.
Sure.
But Dave has made great strides in his development over the past 18 months on and off the court.
If this staff wasn't good, they wouldn't have kept David DeJulius either.
Right. I would even argue Mike Adams-Woods is blossoming into the type of point guard that this team needs. It's 6 assists in the crosstown shootout.
He's been intriguing for sure this season. People wrote him
better
off.
than he was last year.
Sure. People wrote him off in the offseason.
Yeah.
Well,
You're also dealing with your 2 best perimeter defenders out. And it's not even close. John Newman and Rob Fennessy are elite perimeter defenders. And they are not on this roster, and we're not sure when they're going to be back on this roster because of injuries. Hopefully in a month, probably more like 6 weeks from now. So everything you worked on in the summer and in the preseason, John Newman gets hurt in the super secret scrimmage. So right on the eve of the season, he's out. And Rob Fennessy, right as he's starting to find his way and his place in this system, breaks his foot.
Mm-hmm.
The notion that John Cunningham, who hired Wes Miller after an extensive search,
correct,
and has put his eggs in Wes Miller's basket, would cut bait or even consider cutting bait after 18 months is just being an asshole.
Doesn't make sense.
There's no other take that makes sense. You're just trying to start shit and be an asshole. Now, I have some intel that we could see coming up in the very near future. Cincinnati doubling down on their commitment to Wes Miller.
Weird. How could that happen if he's on the hot seat?
Right. You would think if he was on the hot seat, that wouldn't be something that would be on the table.
Huh.
Instead, my understanding is Cincinnati wants to put even more belief in their head basketball coach. They want
Sounds like the kind of thing you want to do for a head coach who's heading into the Big 12.
Yeah. What you don't want to do is go into the Big 12 with a coach that has things hanging over his head like, oh, now your contract's down to 4 years. Now your contract's down to 3 years. Oh, recruiting, you're recruiting against you becomes that program doesn't believe in the guy that they've got running the show. And what happens a lot now, I think it's important to, like, when you talk about coaching contracts, to like keep up with the times. It used to be like, I remember Mick for a long, Huggins especially, and then Mick for a long time, they had a 4-year contract that had a rollover. So every year, essentially, they had a 4-year contract. And then they would negotiate, like when they had successful years, you would negotiate a raise and a new contract. But they always had this kind of 4-year rollover system so that when you were recruiting, you could always say, I'm going to be here while you're here.
Right.
The new thing has been 6-year contracts. And then what happens is the 6 years goes down to 4. And as long as everybody's happy, you bump it back out to 6. This is what didn't happen in Louisville with Scott Satterfield and why he had gotten down to 2 years, and that relationship was headed for divorce. It was very clear that relationship was headed for divorce. Take whatever side you want, but if you get down to 2 years on your contract and you haven't been rolled over, there's problems between you and the administration, which we know there were problems between Louisville and Scott Satterfield for mainly because he interviewed the first year after getting the job. He interviewed somewhere else. Whatever, neither here nor there. I don't mean to go down that road. After this year, Wes Miller is going to have 4 years remaining on his contract. And you're going into the Big 12 essentially with Wes Miller as the lowest paid coach in the league because Wes Miller was paid on an American Conference scale and not the best conference in America. I think it sends, and you let me know what you think about this, I think it sends a bad message if Cincinnati plays their first game in the Big 12 next year with the lowest paid coach in the conference. Agree or disagree?
I think it shows at that point that you don't have as much invested into your basketball program as the rest of the conference. It doesn't. What does that do for you if you're a recruit and you're going to play for essentially the cheapest school in the league?
Wes Miller, we've seen, wants to recruit against Kansas and Baylor and Oklahoma State, and he's got 2 top 50 guys right now. He was in on number 1. Right. They're in on Flory Badunga and Santos Cyril. Like, he's not looking to recruit against the back end teams in the league. He's looking to recruit against the top end teams in the league, and those teams are going to say, "You're going to go play for the lowest paid coach in the country."
It's not a good look.
It's a terrible look.
Not in the country, but in the
Big 12
conference.
You know what I mean? Conference.
In the conference.
So I think there are some rumblings that pretty soon there's a good chance we could hear Wes Miller gets extended back out to 6 years and gets a raise that puts him. Obviously, he's not going to be paid like the best coach in the Big 12. These hiccups, man.
That's exactly why I just had the long blink. I'm like, second time tonight. My goodness.
I take a drink, I get the hiccups. Maybe I should just not consume water. I think we're good. I think they're gone. You want a coach that's in the middle of the pack. If you have a coach that, like,
at least, sure.
Well, Wes has not earned yet being a top 5 coach in the Big 12.
Doesn't make sense.
Right. That's not commiserate with the situation. But if you're Cincinnati and you're one of the best all-time basketball programs in the country, you cannot go into the new league and have the lowest paid coach. You can't. It makes you look terrible.
I'd agree.
So, my understanding is there's some things some wheels moving behind the scene that Wes is going to get bumped back out to 6 years. He's going to get a raise that shows John Cunningham's commitment to him and shows John Cunningham's belief in how he's building the program, and basically gives a middle finger to anybody locally that thinks Wes Miller's on the hot seat.
Well, if he's looking for a new house on a new contract, I hear there's a house with a barn with a couple of basketball hoops in it available.
Wes does not have kids. Is he moving like the managers in there?
Bullshit, he doesn't have kids. He's got 15 of them.
And the managers and
yeah. He's got kids. Just, it's not a traditional family.
I don't know that they're allowed to live with him like that.
Just saying, he could host some pretty awesome parties.
He could host some pretty awesome parties. I do know there's a lot of interest in the barn because you're in Cincinnati. There's a lot of large Catholic families that want to send their kids to the backyard to go play in the barn. Like, they're 8 kids. Like, get out of this house and go play in the backyard, except for it's a barn with basketball.
I don't know. Back to the topic, though.
Yeah.
Your thoughts? I feel like it's a good move by the university. It shows that you do believe in the stability of the program. You do believe in what they're doing is progressing this program in the right direction. And it's a sign of good faith, if nothing else. Like, you've seen the recruiting that he's been trying to do. You've seen the teams that he's put together at this point, and I don't think it's fair to judge him entirely based on these 2 teams, especially when I think we've done the count earlier this season that he's still working with almost a half a roster of somebody else's players. And until he's put together a full – you really going to fire a guy who never got to put a full team of his own players together?
It's not even about firing him. It's about letting him get down to 3 years on his contract, 2 years on his contract, where it becomes obvious you're angling for divorce, right? That's what you're angling
It
towards.
just doesn't make sense to me in
Right.
any sense. Like I feel like we're only halfway through a semester and you're trying to give him a final grade, right?
Midterms aren't final grades.
I think there's plenty of room for improvement, absolutely,
Yeah.
in both recruiting and in X's and O's. But at the same time, I don't think Wes is right now. If you called him right now and you asked Wes, are you proud of the product that you've put out the last 2 years? Is he proud? Maybe.
Proud of the guys. Proud of the
Sure.
yeah.
Proud of where they started and where they've
But
come.
the final.
But he's not happy.
No. He said he's not. What? Go watch the crosstown shootout press conference.
He knows how much it means to Cincinnati fans to win that game. He's played in big rivalries. And while I think that him saying that this environment is more electric than a Duke North Carolina game, I don't know if I believe that.
I do.
I'm gonna let him have that one, but I don't know.
I believe it. I believe it for this reason. Because that's a rivalry. Any way you slice it, it's going to be played twice a year.
Yeah.
And it potentially could be played in the ACC tournament. Like, there's not the UC and Xavier fans, one day a year. You only get to host it every other year. It's not something that's in your gym every year. Sometimes you don't get to really do it for 4 years.
Assholes.
And that happened twice, by the way. Crosstown showdown. But anyhow, this to me signifies, if it happens, that there is a belief from this athletic department. And that belief is some people are dumbasses and probably should talk about what they cover and not UC. That's the nightcap. That's the nightcap. See you next time. BearcatJournal.com.
See ya!